Today I'll teach you one of the most important, if not the most important, chess technique that every single grandmaster knows and that you have to know if you want to get good at chess to a certain level. This might be an advanced concept, so if you're a beginner, keep watching, but this might be a little bit difficult because sometimes you cannot really see what your opponent wants to do. And this is basically the point of this concept. The concept is called prophylaxis. And what that means is basically playing a move that doesn't really make a threat or that doesn't really do much, but it prevents an idea that your opponent potentially could have. So, for example, in this position, we see that black has a queen side space advantage, right? So black wants to push these pawns and play this. Okay, this is basically black's plan here, and it's pretty obvious. But white, what does white want to do? Black could just go a6 here, but white now has counterplay. He could play like rook, I don't know, rook a3, and he could try to go g4. This is the onlyest plan that white has to make something on the king side. Play pawn to g4. So what does black in this position do? Instead of rushing, he goes h5, drastically saying you're never gonna do this. And after rook ef1, he goes rook h6. This move is just aimed to have this rook here. If white ever comes to h3 and g4, then the rook is already on the correct file. And after this, g6, just to make sure that the h pawn is protected. And after bishop here, and the king goes to f7. And now the entire king side is locked. There's nothing going on the king side for white. And after queen e1, we can go for our plan, this, and now here. And now actually black plays bishop c6. But there was again a prophylactic move. After bishop c6, he had to play pawn to a5. And this is prophylactic. Why is this prophylactic? Because after bishop c6, white has to move pawn to b4. Basically locking down the queen side. En passant is not so good. And you basically lock down the queen side. And now you stop black plans here, right? So a prophylactic move would be a5. That is stopping b4, because after now b4 is completely stupid, because now you get on this file, and this is just ridiculous. So this would have been a good move, but after bishop c6, but in this game, white missed the resource of b4 and went rook h3, and now a5 b4, and black is essentially winning, almost. So let's look at another game where this concept is also really clear. We start with a normal opening. Bishop e7 is not a common move, and this is also not very common. And now we reach this position, okay? So what are plans here for black? Well, white has a center. So white wants to go c6 and f5. Knowing that, white goes bishop d3. Because f5 is now completely impossible. You just take. And c6, you have a very good response, c4. A moment ago, let's say you do, I don't know, castle c6. Well, now there's not this kind of a response, right? Knight c3, and now you have to take with the e-pawn. So this is a really, really nice move. Bishop d3. The bishop was not really good on c4 anyway, so bishop d3. And now f5 is impossible, and after knight f6, he goes c4, castles, knight c3, and now knight e8. And now he wants again to play f5. But you have to realize sometimes, this is also really important chess, sometimes you have to realize 5 is not really a threat, because we can just trade off the bishop. So after queen e2, that was played in the game, f5, takes, this, and we have a really pleasant position for white. And we can castle kingside, we can castle queenside if we want. We put our bishop here and knight here, and we just play for c5 and advance on the queenside. We have a pleasant game here. So the next example I wanted to show you is a little bit more obvious than the other ones. You always have to ask yourself, what is my opponent going to do on the next move? If it was his move, well, obviously he's gonna play in this position rook takes g4, and after the queen moves, rook takes g2, right? That just is the threat because of the bishop on b7. So what can you do? This rook is really, really dangerous here on the file. Let's say you just go rook e2. That is also a prophylactic move. It defends the g2 pawn, but after rook takes g4 and let's say queen to d3, I mean, black still has a lot of counterplay, and let's say the queen comes here, maybe here. It really depends, and he still has counterplay. He's going to castle long and bring his other rook, and the file is open. So this is not as good, but it's also a prophylactic move. In this position, white is actually winning after pawn to h3. Why? Because now this completely prevents the rook takes g4. And after f takes g4, just h4. And now you've locked down this file completely by this prophylactic move h3. And after this, you go h4. And now black is completely busted. Why is black completely busted? Because we have opposite color bishops. Our king is at the end of the day safer in this position, and black will have to castle here, and we're just gonna attack the king, and he's basically completely lost. The rook's gonna come maybe with the f file, maybe with the d file. Really depends on the position. This is a position that is also very, very interesting. Here in this position, we are attacking like crazy. I mean, look at this. The queen is here, the rook is here. g5 looks so nice. We really want to play g5. But then knight h5. Okay, then knight h5. Okay, so knight f4. If he takes, oops, it's made. But there's a resource here for black, and it's the very common rook takes c3. And after you take back, the queen comes here, and there's mate threatened. You cannot go rook d2, it's checkmate. You have to go rook h2. Now queen a1 check, and the king's just busted. The king is dead, and you're losing the game. No, not even queen a1 check. Just here, and the king moves, and now you pick up this knight, and the game is done because you won just material in this position. So this would be really bad. So this doesn't quite work, right? And also g5 and then knight h5 and sacking this, you're just too slow. Rook h1 and the queen, let's say you want to do it like this. The queen just comes here, trying to defend g7. You're just too slow. Okay, so this doesn't work. So now we realized why it doesn't work. g5 doesn't work and knight f4 because rook takes c3. So what if you play a prophylactic move? Rook to d3 is what white played in this position. And this is a very, very nice prophylactic move. Because again, prophylaxis is this because you're not doing anything, you're just protecting this in case you want to play g5. And now black played rook here, trying to prevent g5. But this is actually a losing move. You can still go g5. The interesting thing is, after now knight h5, knight f4 works now. Well, knight f4 is completely working because after rook takes c3, rook takes, you have to take with the other rook, so there's no threat here. And now you have time with the white pieces to go knight takes h5. You're threatening mate, takes, and the game is practically over. Maybe the king can escape mate, but the queen, the rook is still hanging, so the game's over. Instead of g5, what happens if the rook just takes? Well, this was the whole purpose of the rook going here, right? Very nice move now, rook to d5. Rook to d5. This, now the next moves don't really have to do anything with the idea of prophylaxis, but it's just really nice tactic. Rook d5, the knight cannot take, obviously, because then it's mate again. The queen is attacked, so the rook is forced to take, and after knight here, we are threatening to take this knight. And after rook e8, we cannot rush. We cannot rush because after this, we're actually down a pawn, and the king just escapes. So we have to play a nice move here, knight ef4, bringing another knight into the attack. And now, after bishop c6, we play a really nice move, pawn to e5. This is the game killer. Again, if you take, it's too early. It's too early. The king goes away. Pawn to e5 though. After g takes here, we could go knight takes, and after this, we can go knight h5. Why does the pawn need to be here? Well, because after this immediately, there's just queen g5 check. there's queen g5 check, and we have to trade this, and the game's lost. So after pawn to e5 takes now this, and now a knight h5, and yes, mate threatened, you have to take here, and then rook g1. The game is over, right? King h8 mate. So this is really nice. By the way, what happened? This is obviously not possible, right, mate? This will lose the queen, and you might be asking what happens if this. Well, you just take the knight, and now there's actually another mate threat here, so you have to take, and now queen takes h7, this, and now we captured bishop, and after queen takes rook e1 check, and the game is done. Game over. Really, really nice tactics at the end of the day, but just remember, there's this nice prophylactic move, rook d3. Really, really nice. So what can you take away from this video? Just always ask yourself, what can my opponent do? What are resources in the position in general? And then you will find it, these kind of moves. And I can tell you right now, this is going to get you to the advanced level. If you're like 1500 on chess.com, this is going to get you to the next level. If you're 1800 on chess.com, this is really going to get you to the next level. I cannot stress this to you enough. This is so important. Getting this concept just ingrained in your brain. Hit the like and subscribe button right now. If you want to get your chess games analyzed, click the first link in the description, and I see you in the next video.